Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend the Momo Fanfics, back with the amazing fanfiction. This is Series A, What If Deku Became a Assassin's Creed. Izuku Midoriya cursed his luck, but the internal swear was undercut by the sheer panic overwhelming his mind. His limbs could barely move, all of them restrained within the viscous body of a villain that had come from nowhere. As if the bullying he suffered every day weren't bad enough, it seemed this villain had come to put an end to his miserable life. "Don't struggle," the sludge man said, his voice uncomfortably close to Izuku's ear. "That'll only make it take longer and hurt more. Just give up. Your body will make the perfect meat puppet to help me get away. I don't want to die," Izuku screamed inside his mind. He fought as best he could, his arms and legs moving as if he were trying to swim in floating jello. "My life isn't the best, but I don't want to die like this." The sludge forced his lips apart, a foul taste similar to burning hair and mud crossing his tongue. He gagged, this sludge villain trying to force himself inside the middle schooler without damaging his outsides. Izuku's fingers clawed at the villain, but they passed through his form, only displacing minuscule amounts of insolids temporarily. The world turned dark. It wasn't a gradual process like the stories Izuku had read. Rather, it happened in the time it took to blink, a red glow coming from his peripherals. He wretched as more of the man's heteromorphic body forced its way inside. "Somebody," Izuku mentally wept. "Anybody. Save me. Ha ha." The villain laughed. "My escape is." Izuku felt the sludge around him start to warm, its previously smooth sides rippling with dozens of small undulations. Solid parts came to the surface, forming a skin-like layer over the semisolid. "But I thought," the sludge villain gasped. "No, don't. I don't want." His words cut off with a gurgle, his viscous body sloughing off Izuku in great pieces that each hit the concrete with a nasty splat. The boy's red shoes touched the earth, Izuku stumbling forward to get away from his attacker. He retched, coughing up what parts had made it inside his mouth. They tastes no better coming out than they had going in. "Are you okay, kid?" Izuku started at the question, the soft voice of a woman cutting through the disgusting sounds of his stomach emptying its unwelcome contents. His head turned slowly to see who had spoken. He only saw a white glow in the darkness. He blinked, a quiet wish to see the one who had saved him, bringing color and light back to the world. She stood behind the mud-like remains, her clothing unassuming but reminiscent of some kind of robe. They were dark, almost black, but a second look revealed them to be a very deep purple. The robes were longer on her right side, the shorter part on the left falling to her mid-thigh. Boots covered the lower parts of her legs, the only skin visible below her eyes being one knee and part of her thigh. 3 separate belts circled her torso, one around her waist and the other 2 running diagonally over her chest, one over the other at her shoulder and both nearly parallel to her uneven robe cut. All 3 carried pouches of things Izuku could only guess at. Her face was covered in cloth the same color as her robes. The only other indicator of who this woman may be were her eyes. They were a deep forest green, her pupils slitted like a cat's, staring at him from under a raised hood with a low point. One side of her hood, The same side where her upper belts went over her shoulder, stood higher than the other, hinting at heteromorphic ears. All in all, the asymmetry gave her a distinctly off-balance appearance that disoriented Izuku for a moment. He shook his head quickly, schooling his features and crushing his emotions to be sorted later, a skill years of bullying had forced him to develop. Unlike so many of those bullies, however, this woman did not appear disgusted at his presence. "Are you okay?" the woman repeated. Izuku jumped, his cheeks coloring as he realized he'd been studying his savior. He bowed. Thank you for saving me, miss. I think I'm okay." "Good." She nodded. She knelt, sifting through the sludge at her feet until she found something. Her slender hand, clothed in a glove that covered all but her ring finger and the ring-like burn mark thereupon, pulled up an ornate cross embellished with gold leaf. Each of her fingers ended in a nail sharpened to a deadly point. She pulled on the cross, a part of the bottom shaft separating to reveal a USB drive. "Are you a pro hero?" Izuku asked. The woman's green eyes turned on the boy, studying him in return. He was scrawny, that was the first thing she noticed about him. His clothing was simple, a standard uniform from the local middle school, but his bright red shoes didn't seem to match. His face was cute in a childish sort of way, splattered with freckles that only emphasized his own green eyes. His hair all but matched his eyes. She couldn't tell if the dark green follicles, messy hairstyle was natural or from his struggles a minute ago. "No," she answered slowly, her voice even. "I'm not a pro. Does it matter? I want to be a hero, but..." The boy reached for words, tears already forming at the corners of his eyes. "I want to save people, but everyone says I don't have a quirk. You must have seen that. I couldn't save myself. Even so, do you think I could be a hero if I tried hard enough?" The woman sighed. One of the bumps at the top of her hood twitched, a motion Izuku only caught because of his superb vision. She stepped backward, all but vanishing into the shadows of the bridge. No, this couldn't be it. Someone had finally acted for his protection, he couldn't lose them so soon. He blinked, the world darkening again save a white glow. Wait! The boy cried, his body moving before he could comprehend it. His arm reached out without his prior consent, coming within inches of her arm. She moved, flowing like water under his outstretched limb. Izuku's eyes widened as she flipped him, planting him on his back before rolling him over. The glow disappeared again. "How did you know where I was?" she hissed. Could see you," Izuku answered. "The world went dark but I could see you. Why you were glowing. I'm sorry." Away from his line of sight, her eyes widened. She blinked her surprise away before focusing on the kid pinned below her. "You said the world went dark?" she questioned. "Is that your quirk?" I'm quirkless." "Then what do you mean when you say I was glowing?" I don't know," Izuku stuttered. When that villain attacked me, everything went black but he glowed red. And then I wanted to not lose sight of you, and it happened again. I didn't too." Releasing him, the woman backed away, allowing the boy to shakily get to his feet and dust himself off. "Sorry." Force of habit, she said. Izuku turned, facing her again. Listen, kid. This world isn't as black and white as the dynamic of heroes and villains makes most people believe. If you want to be a hero, a real hero, not just a pro, you can be, but it will be a hard, dark path. Dark. You have the sort of skills our brotherhood is looking for, and some of us are professional heroes. My friends and I would be willing to train you, but I can promise any dreams of sunshine, rainbows, and butterflies you have about hero work will need to go out the window. Why, you'll train me? Izuku's face brightened. Don't get ahead of yourself, she said, cutting him off. This is not a choice to make lightly. This world is locked in a shadow war that has been raging since the idea of government itself, long before quirks appeared. All that this age of superpowers has done is evolve our war with new strategies and dangers. This villain, he was one of our enemies, a murderer and a blight on the freedom of humanity. If we are to train you, you must be willing to fight. All heroes fight, Izuku answered quickly. Lethally, she added, gesturing to the mud-like remains. Izuku swallowed, nervous sweat running into his neckline. His silence allowed her to continue. We don't fight for justice, but for the dream of a lasting peace. The words threw Izuku for a loop. How could one be a hero but not fight for justice? Was there not a connection between justice and peace? I don't understand, he admitted. I didn't expect you to, but many of the lessons we teach are not meant to be understood easily. Sometimes, the ends justify the means and sometimes they don't. Sometimes, you are forced to choose the lesser of two evils and take the burden of sin onto yourself. Think through my words. Consider if your desire to become a hero is worth getting involved with us. You would be an excellent member of our order, but it is a burden and, for more than I would like to admit, ultimately a death sentence. If you still want our training, go to the Dagoba Municipal Beach tomorrow at 2 o'clock. If you go there, we will know and I will explain more. If you don't show, then I was never here. She shifted, walking past him slowly. Izuku turned to follow her with his eyes, only to watch in awe as she crouched and jumped, hooking her fingers into the underside of the bridge above. In one fluid motion, she swung her legs up, spinning up onto the bridge before disappearing from view. Wow! Izuku stared, his mind lost in the idea of one day being able to do that. He jumped, however, when his phone rang, shattering the silence. He fumbled, nearly dropping it several times before managing to check the caller ID. Even before, he knew it must have been his mother. Kachan hadn't called him in a decade and no one else had wanted the number of the quirkless kid. Izuku. He could hear the tears in his mother's voice. Where are you? I was expecting you home 5 minutes ago. Are you okay? You're not hurt, are you? Did something happen? I'm fine, Mom. He paused, his eyes landing on the inhuman human remains still in the shadows. Nasty as they were, they had been a sentient being only minutes ago, and the thought caused him to feel that unsettling burning of bile in the back of his throat. He had barely registered it before, but in saving his life, the woman had killed this villain. If his mother knew that, however, she wouldn't let him out of the house until he reached 50. He swallowed back the bile and gave a half-truth. I needed to clear my head, so I took a detour. Well, come on home. I'm making your favorite for dinner and it's dangerous out there. Izuku looked at what remained of the sludge villain again, a decision already solidifying in his gut. If nothing else, he could at least hear the woman out. I know, Mom. I'll be right there. Hanging up, the boy slipped the phone into his pocket. Well, he thought, if I'm going to start training, I might as well start now. He turned, falling into a runner's stance, his special shoes grinding against the pavement. He breathed before taking off, running as hard as he could. Above, Nekoi smiled under her mask. She wouldn't need to worry about him saying anything or getting his name because she'd see that talented kid tomorrow. The Dagoba Municipal Beach wasn't so much a beach as a landfill. Izuku vaguely remembered the beach as it had been when he was young, but trash dumping had slowly accumulated until even refrigerators and broken cars could be left on the sand with no one the wiser to the change. The sun hung high in the cloudless sky, several degrees past its zenith. Izuku leaned against a dumped refrigerator, hiding from the sun's rays in its growing shadow. He was not dressed in his uniform for it was Saturday, his body now dressed in a simple t-shirt and a pair of shorts. His foot tapped nervously, slowly indenting the sand beneath him. For the 7th time in half as many minutes, he checked the clock on his phone. 2:46. He swallowed down his disappointment, refusing to let his emotions roam. This was foolish. He should have known that she wouldn't show up. Who would want to train a quirkless nobody like him? He should have lied about that visual effect being some quirk, but he'd missed his chance. Letting out a hard breath, he slipped his phone back into his pocket and took a step out of the shadow. 61 minutes, huh? Izuku whipped around, his eyes rising to the top of the fridge whose shadow he'd been standing in. The woman from the day before sat atop it, perched like a sort of frog ready to move at any time. A smile twinkled in her eyes. Thanks, kid. You just won me enough coin for dinner. He showed up before the clock was supposed to start, a male voice said, Izuku turning to see a man dressed in red robes leaning against a washing machine. He was similarly covered, a hood with a pointed front shading all but his chin. Like the woman, our over-under was 50 minutes past 2. Our over-under was 50 minutes period, and he waited just over an hour, the woman argued. She flipped off the old appliance, her feet hitting the sand with ne'er a sound. So kid, I take it you've thought about my offer. I want to know more, the verdict answered. Had these two been waiting the whole time just to see how long he'd last before his insecurities got to him? I want to know what you fight and why. I want to know what you mean when you say you're fighting for peace, not justice. An information gatherer, the man observed. So far so good. I can't give you the full story until you agree to join us, the woman said, but I suppose I can give you the overview. Isn't that right, Keeper? Izuku felt rather than saw the man nod. All right kid, ask away. You mentioned a shadow war yesterday. One that has been going on forever. If you can't tell me everything, can you tell me what both sides fight for and which side you're on? The woman tilted her head, a ripple in the fabric over her mouth hinting at a smile. Both sides fight for what they believe to be the benefit of humanity as a whole, and both fight for the same ultimate goal, peace. Then why fight and kill each other? Because our definitions of peace are different, she answered. One side wants humanity to choose peace for itself, through truth, conversation, acceptance, and freedom. It's a pipe dream, a hopeful aspiration, but a dream fought for nonetheless. The other side fights for control, for the political and physical power to sway the people into peaceful compliance through fear or force, for by pulling everyone under one banner and making all peoples the same, they can prevent the violence that plagues the world. Which do you think is the right path? Izuku paused. He'd always considered peace to come from strength, but violence still existed with so many strong heroes out there in the world. His analytical mind kicked in, studying the question and the factors as he would with quirks. Both dreams have their merits and both reach for what many would consider an unattainable goal. Human history shows the folly in both ways of thinking. Freedom allows dissenting opinions to spread and take root, making any peace temporary, even if long-term. America is a good example of this because their style of government tries to balance two or more opposing sides, but even that careful balance can be toppled as shown by their civil wars. Ruling through fear, however, only invites revolution. China has many examples of this, and Izuku spiraled into muttering as he weighed the two arguments. The woman blinked, tapping him on the shoulder. He jerked, surprised. Do you have an answer? Yes, he said after a moment. Though ruling through fear seems like the easiest way, it would never work in the end. The only way to make real peace, unlikely as it may be, is if everyone chooses peace. Her hidden smile widened. Good answer, kid. That's what we fight for, to let humanity have the time to choose peace without the boot of our enemies on their necks. We move in the shadows, removing that which would take away the free will of the people, whether that would be villains, politicians, or even heroes. But heroes would never. Not every hero fights for a good cause, the man interrupted, reminding Izuku that he was there. Do you remember Raygun? He was a hero that was murdered in his bed 6 years ago, Izuku said. It had been all over the news with politicians across Japan calling for the perpetrator to be found. Ultimately, some minor thief was charged for the crime and died en route to prison. Many didn't trust the ruling since the trial itself was not broadcasted, saying that the thief had been a scapegoat with so many calling for blood. He was a man who used his money and influence to place his friends in positions of power, the man in red said. With them covering for him, he could get away with misdeeds up to and including aggravated sexual assault, sweeping them under the rug. Out of all professional heroes, why do you think his death brought so much media attention? Because he didn't die fighting a villain, Izuku answered quickly. He blinked, implications dawning on him. Wait, you mean you all? Who knows, kid? Izuku's mind reeled at the information. Raygun had been unnaturally prominent in political endorsements and commercials, but nearly every hero ended up in one or two over their career. Even All Might had sponsorship deals for merchandise to fund his agency, though he'd never done an endorsement. So kid, the woman said, turning Izuku's attention back to her. The world isn't pretty and folks on both sides of the law fight for both sides in this shadow war. Do you still think getting involved is worth a chance at becoming a pro hero? Can you actually get me into a hero school? If you work hard enough, you have to actually earn a spot. What would happen if I say no to this? Then I'll have Keeper erase your memory of yesterday and today with his quirk, memory loss, and you'll go about the rest of your normal, non-heroic life none the wiser. His mouth went dry. This was far bigger than he'd thought it would be. Even so, the woman before him has saved his life, so she couldn't be truly evil. Dozens of memories, of all the times bullies had belittled him and kept him down, asserting their social power over him, flashed through the boy's mind. This was the chance of a lifetime, a chance for him to step out of his lot of being stepped on as a weakling. Who knew if he'd ever get another chance like this again? Okay. His voice came out soft, barely a whisper. He breathed, reaffirming his decision. Okay. I'll do it. I want to fight to protect people. To prevent those with power from abusing those without. I want to fight for a peace that will last 1,000 years and more, where everyone is equal by choice, quirk or no quirk. Damn, Keeper chuckled. You found a good one this time, Nekoi. I agree, Keeper, the now named Nekoi responded. What's your name, kid? Izuku. Izuku Midoriya. Good to meet you, kid. She reached up, pulling her hood and mask down. Her hair was a shiny silver, pulled back into a ponytail behind her. As Izuku had suspected would be the case, a pair of cat ears stuck up from her head, but he was surprised to see the one on her left. His left side had its top half missing. Other than sharper than average canines and cat eyes, everything about her face was that of an unassuming but pretty woman. The sound of ruffling cloth had Izuku turn to the man who had similarly pulled his hood back. He had a face best described as forgettable, brown hair, brown eyes, and no blemishes to remember. The local brotherhood calls me Keeper, he said, stepping over. Remember, this life is hard and, with my powers, you can walk away at any point in your training. But know this, Izuku Midoriya. Once you become a full member of the Assassin Brotherhood, once you become one of our informants in a hero school, you can't leave. The Templars will target you whether you remember or not. Assassins. Izuku gasped. Templars. I guess those are the two sides, but to call yourselves assassins makes you sound like the bad guys. Well, it's what we do, Nekoi shrugged. When Templars or similar-minded people move into positions of power and start taking away the will of the people, we remove them. It's more common than you think, but it doesn't make the news too often. Plenty of Templars are willing to manipulate others from the background. The ones that make names for themselves are still in the history books. Rulers like Cleopatra and Alexander the Great, and true Templars like Rasputin, Hitler, and too many others to name now. That's one of the reasons I was after that sludge guy yesterday. He was a Templar grunt who stole information after killing an informant of ours. Thank you for that, Izuku replied. But, is there any way I could do this without killing anyone? That just isn't an option, Keeper said with a shake of his head. Not if you want to do this and be a hero like Nekoi mentioned. With the way things are, killing the Templars is the only way to protect the people. It'll be hard, but I promise once you've seen what the Templars are willing to do, you'll see why we have to go to such lengths. Would you care to follow us to our den? Nekoi asked. I'd rather continue this conversation inside away from where other people could walk around, even with Keeper's quirk. Oh. The middle schooler blinked but accepted the idea. He and Keeper followed Nekoi to a discarded pickup, the part cat woman sliding under it in a smooth motion. She vanished into the sand. You next, kid, Keeper said, his eyes scanning the surroundings. Not nearly as graceful as the trained killer, Izuku dropped to the sand. Mollified that he could leave before he got too deep and that he wouldn't remember if this brotherhood rejected him, he squirmed under the car. Without warning, the sand below him gave way to nothing, the boy rolling onto a small mound of sand before hitting solid flooring. He stood slowly, his eyes trying to take in everything at once. The walls, floor, and ceiling were a slate gray, unassuming and uniform save for a sliding door on the far side of the room. The walls themselves, however, held 9 different ovals each 6 feet in height. Izuku turned, ignoring Nekoi for a moment, to study the oval he'd come through. On the other side was the underside of the pickup, grains of sand creeping over the edges of the oval to fall into the mound he'd rolled over. The other ovals each had something on the other side. One a massive bush, another a wall of ivy, another the bottom of a dumpster. These are portals, Izuku realized, whispering to himself. This person's quirk must be incredibly strong for them to maintain 9 different portals at once without being here. And it looks like they go all over the region, if not the country, since the scenes range from the city to the parks. Keeper rolled through the portal as Izuku continued thinking out loud, the man landing on his feet with an air of familiarity. He blinked as his eyes adjusted to the light, his ears picking up the mutterings of the boy he and Nekoi had invited to the base. There a correlation in area, or is it based solely on number? Could the user create more smaller portals? If so, then there must be an upper limit with one large portal. Judging by the 9 here, that one would be. The cat woman commented as she walked over, wiping sand from Keeper's shoulder. When you said he was an information gatherer, I didn't realize how accurate you were. He can do that, and you say he's got the legendary eagle vision. We need to send you out on more scouting missions. He's got potential to become like one of the greats. If he's got the guts to kill, the woman replied. She reached over, resting a hand on Izuku's shoulder. The boy jumped, a sheepish look crossing his face. Sorry, he said, rubbing the back of his head. I get a bit carried away when I see a new quirk in action. I can't help theorizing what it could do if tested with. Oh, we are going to get mileage out of you, Nekoi promised. First, though, Keeper and I need to bring you to our mentor. It's him who gets final say on if you get accepted or not. After that, we're giving you a crash course in the tools of our trade. Izuku gulped. The Brotherhood's head sat on a pillow as he watched dozens of members from the Japanese cells of the Osaka Brotherhood training in pairs or trios, the symbol of the assassins carved into the wall behind him. His hair had been black but was now in the transition period of turning to gray, while his robes were a dull gold interwoven with black. His eyes drooped from a combination of age, mental weight, and genetics as he studied the youngsters below. Periodically, he'd notice one perform a stance or strike wrong and watch them until they did it correctly. Once that happened, he'd activate his quirk, his eyes glowing a dull blue as he locked that pupil in that corrected stance until he felt it was burned into their muscle memory. Perhaps it was harsh, but he hated when he sent someone younger on a mission and they didn't return, and everyone was younger at his age. Shaking the thought away, he set about recognizing those training as more than just bodies. There were developments in the Devil's game and he needed more information. Two figures stood out, each at a different front in the cultural battle between assassins and Templars and with sway over heroics. That would do for now. The head clapped thrice, said figures pulling away from their training. The one that had been sparing bowed to her opponent and both hero assassins leapt the ledge above, kneeling before the old man. Their robes were opposites, the woman in white and the man in black, though he did have a white scarf. "Mentor," they said. "Raise your heads and sit with me," the man told them. "There have been developments. I want your inputs, Shota, Usagiyama." The assassins lowered their hoods, one allowing her rabbit ears to stand once more. She had a strong build mostly hidden by her white robes that contrasted with her darker skin and complemented her clothing. The other, a man much like the mentor, was pale with black hair and eye bags. "I feel it is time we discuss the trigger issue. There has been little information at UA," Aizawa said, barely holding back a yawn. "Principal Nezu has chosen to stay out of it so long as it does not affect any of the students. As you know, he views the battle between our orders as something to be contained but sorted out by humans. The Templars within the school are ignorant of its connection to their order. I suspect to keep the principal's neutral stance considering its detriment to the masses. Unfortunately, trigger is on the rise in thugs on the street," Usagiyama picked up. "It's quickly becoming the newest drug craze. Luckily, its high price is keeping it limited mostly to organized crime, but that still serves to make hero work more dangerous. The police are on edge about it." "I see." The man they'd called mentor closed his eyes, considering the information he'd been given. "That is not enough for us to act. Not until we can find where they make trigger or the Templars start using it themselves." "Aizawa, maintain Nezu's neutrality. I know that only his inhumanity keeps him from choosing a side. I want it to stay that way. I'm just glad the so-called diplomatic immunity among the UA teachers goes both ways because of the implications it would have on their reputation. Usagiyama, see what more you can dig up. If our contacts in the police find anywhere trigger is made, I want you in there before them erasing all clues to the Templars. We don't need to put the cops at risk because of a Templar operation, nor do we want them learning about us." "Understood." "Yes, mentor," they answered. He waved his hand, allowing the assassins to return to their own business. Usagiyama leapt back into her sparring while Aizawa left for a nap, something the head sorely wished he could do as well. The genes bred true, apparently. Down the landing, the door to the portals opened, admitting 3 individuals. The mentor's blue eyes turned, recognizing 2 of them. That there was a third with them spoke well of the talk Nekoi had mentioned. Said woman whispered to the green-haired boy, keeping his eyes forward rather than toward all those training below. The head studied him, noting his scrawniness and hesitancy. He waited as the 3 drew closer, Keeper and Nekoi kneeling. The boy between them copied their motions, earning a positive notch in the head's mental tally. Mentor, we have returned, Nekoi said. Keeper and I agree that Izuku Midoriya is a prime candidate for assassin training. I have confirmed that his eagle vision is powerful enough to show friends, foes, and informants, similar to the records of the greatest assassins known. What is your opinion, Keeper? His desire to help the people is strong and he agreed that our path is the only way to true peace. His will to kill does not yet exist, though if it did, we would not have him here. Izuku stared at the ground with wide eyes, shocked at how these adults could talk about him with simultaneous callousness and care while he was here among them. The head hummed as he considered their answers. He watched the boy squirm, his eyes set of the ground away from any incriminating signs or going-ons within the room. Izuku Midoriya, the man said, the boy stiffening before slowing looking up. The mentor's eyes were abnormal, the pupils each 2 vertical lines like the pause button of a remote surrounded by blue. The assassins and novices call me mentor. Assuming all goes well here, you will as well, but I have some questions for you first. He paused, allowing the boy to absorb his words. Izuku nodded, saying nothing. Midoriya, what do you believe the goal of the Assassin's Brotherhood is? Izuku stuttered, trying to rack his thoughts under the fierce stare of the mentor. It's to protect the people. Their free will, I mean, sir. They want peace, but they want us to choose it universally, not force it on people. A broad answer, but accurate, the mentor nodded. What have Nekoi and Keeper told you of our fight? Your main enemies are Templars. Well, they are the most unified. The assassins fight and kill to defend the free will of mankind for the hope of an everlasting peace through choice. They also said there are assassins and Templars that are both heroes and villains. With the war, I guess that's not too surprising, even if it's hard to swallow. That is the long and short of our history. I can see why Keeper would want to keep your introduction vague. Midoriya, I wish to ask you one more question before confirming your motivation to join our order. If I told you that nothing is true and everything is permitted, what would you tell me? Please, be honest. Izuku paused, trying to find the words he wanted without outright being disrespectful. I'm sorry, sir, but that sounds ridiculous. I mean, how can nothing be true? It's true that All Might is the greatest hero of the generation. Thousands of people look up to him as the symbol of peace. And not everything is permitted. We have laws and rules because of that. That is a pretty standard outlook, the mentor grinned, his stare lessening into a more comfortable smile. I ask that because it is a philosophy cultivated amongst our order. When those with power want to lead others astray, remember, nothing is true. Nekoi and Keeper answered, Izuku jolting between them at their response. Where others are bound by morality and law, remember, everything is permitted. I still don't understand, Izuku admitted. I do not expect you to, Mentor said. Izuku blinked, remembering that Nekoi had said the same thing upon their first meeting. We ask each assassin recruit to dwell on the words of our forebears and decide what they mean in our ultimate quest. The life of an assassin is a road of violence, secrecy, blood, and death. Knowing what you know, are you willing to walk alongside us, to take the lives of those who would abuse their power in the name of peace for that same goal? Will you become an assassin, Izuku Midoriya? Izuku swallowed, his mouth dry. Even knowing Keeper's memory-related quirk would allow him to leave any time before he completed this training, the offer still sat on his shoulders like a weighted blanket. His spine itched and sweat beaded the back of his neck. He breathed. Yes, he answered. I might not become a famous hero, but the freedom of the people is bigger than any villain I could fight. To protect people, even if from the shadows, I'll become an assassin. The mentor grinned, his smile mirrored by both Nekoi and Keeper. Good answer, Assassin Novice Izuku Midoriya. Your training begins now. Mom, I'm heading out. Izuku yelled into the hallway, his hand on the doorknob of his family's apartment. What, again? His mother Inko called from deeper inside. The boy could hear the frown in her voice. Izu, this is the 6th day in the last week. Where are you going so much? Just, out with friends. The boy did not like the way his sentence pitched at the end. It wasn't technically a lie, but that was one of the things Nekoi and Keeper had told him was his biggest mental weakness. He'd slowly gotten better with lies of omission and half-truths, but lying to his mother just seemed like something he could not do. Not well, anyway. Inko Midoriya emerged from the bowels of the apartment, the woman drying her hands. She had long, green hair and was on the heavier side, but her eyes shone with motherly concern. Said eyes hardened. Is it a girl? No, Mom. I'm not in a relationship. Izuku felt his face burn, the sting of the force of his blush almost as potent as the way his mother's face fell. He couldn't tell if she was relieved or disappointed. It shifted back to worry quickly, either way. Izu, have you joined a gang? What? No, Izuku sputtered, trying to comprehend the absurd idea of him in a gang. Of course not. Why would you think that? It's just, you've left as soon as you finished your homework every day these last few weeks and you aren't back until late. I'd hoped you'd met a nice girl, but, she sighed, her shoulders slumping. I've seen the bruises, Izu. I know you tried to hide them, but there's blood in your laundry, too. It reminded me of when those boys attacked you and you tried to hide it. I'm just worried for you. Izuku let go on the doorknob, the verdict walking over to wrap his mother in a hug. Unshed tears hung at the edges of her eyes. I've been training, Izuku admitted, his head on his mother's shoulder. I made some friends recently and they offered to help me train to get into a good hero school. Maybe even UA. They even have some contacts that could help me get another job if things don't work out. I didn't want to tell you because I know what you think of my dream to be a pro hero. Oh Izu, Inko sobbed, returning her son's hug. Her baby boy was almost as tall as her now, muscle she didn't know he had rippling under his clothing. I'm sorry for not telling you, Mom. It's just, I was scared you'd try to stop me if you knew. I wanted to be able to show you results so you could see it was working. She sniffed, trying to wipe away her excessive tears to no avail. You know how dangerous hero work is, Izuku. Why don't you become a businessman like? She paused, knowing that subject had always been a sore one. How about construction? There's always buildings that need rebuilt after hero fights. It's a lucrative business with the right company. I have to at least try, Mom, Izuku said, pulling himself from her grip. I know I don't have a flashy quirk like some of the pros out there, but I want to give getting into a hero school my best shot. If I don't, then I don't. Okay, Inko relented. I suppose at the very least you'll learn how to defend yourself in case you get jumped by some minor villain or something. Yeah, look on the bright side. What Izuku failed to mention was just how much he knew he would end up using his self-defense training, should he complete his training and become a full-fledged member of the Assassin's Brotherhood. With a light squeeze, he ended the hug and let go, allowing another second without movement so Inko could relinquish her grip as well. All right Mom, I'm heading out. I'll be back for dinner tonight. Please be careful. Izuku nodded in response, opening the door and stepping outside. He held his breath until the door clicked shut, the boy waiting until he heard the receding footsteps of his mother before he relaxed. Emotion rushed through him, the boy leaning against the doorway as his stomach flipped. Bile burned the back of his throat and his nails bit into the palms of his hands. He stood there for half a minute, wallowing in the mental spiral, before shaking his head and shoving such internal sensations aside to be sorted through and dealt with later. Focusing on his task at hand, Izuku loosened his muscles and, with barely a pause, threw himself over the guardrail. He plummeted for 10 feet or so before his fingers latched onto the branch of a tree, the vertet swinging with the momentum before letting go and hopping or swinging through the branches before coming full circle to the building again, only now 2 floors down. He leapt, latching onto the small ridge of the second-floor walkway before blinking, his eyes taking on a slight golden glow. The world dimmed, but no colors appeared to stand out against the darkness. Izuku blinked the effect away as light and color returned to him. With the coast clear, he dropped the rest of the way, landing on the concrete in a crouch. True to his genetic abilities, though he sorely wished to call it a quirked sight, there was no one about to see his athletic feat. Free of any eyes, Izuku took off at a jog toward the Dagoba Municipal Beach. Nekoi was there to greet him as Izuku rolled through the Dagoba portal, the boy settling on his feet and wiping the sand from his clothes. She tapped her foot, her cat ears quirked to either side while her head tilted slightly. One eyebrow rose. You're almost late, Midoriya. My mother had questions, he answered. And, I told her I'd met some friends and that they offered to help me train for a chance to get into a hero school. She didn't like it but agreed to let me try and that it would be nice if I knew how to defend myself. Half-truths are the best lies, Nekoi said, nodding approvingly. Easiest sort to keep track of. How do you deal with it? Izuku questioned. Do you have it? The guilt, that churning in your gut at having to lie to those you care about? The cat woman eyed the assassin novice with a sigh, gesturing for the boy to follow her out of the portal room so they could have this conversation where there would be no traffic. Izuku followed quietly but found himself surprised when, rather than leading him toward the changing rooms where he could put on his weighted novice training robes, she took him down another hallway before waving her hand at a doorway. The inside of the room was a soft beige with a maroon carpet. A small coffee table sat between 2 recliners and a love seat in the center of the room while a refrigerator hummed softly in the corner beside a table with a coffee pot and water heater. Reading the atmosphere, Izuku sat in one of the chairs, Nekoi walking over to the fridge. Water or soda, Midoriya? The woman asked. Tea, maybe coffee, just water, please. She tossed him a full bottle, the boy snatching it out of the air before twisting the cap off. Nekoi grabbed some milk for herself and settled in the other chair, facing him. They sat there in silence for a minute, both sipping their drinks. You asked about guilt, the assassin began. I want to make sure you're okay. We haven't asked you to do anything that would warrant true guilt yet, so what is it? Izuku felt his tongue twist as so many conflicting emotions rose to the surface, the boy unable to put such into words. He pieced them apart slowly, testing how certain thoughts affected the knot so he could tease out the core reason. I'm not sure yet. Are you having second thoughts? Nekoi asked. I'm still set on becoming or failing that, helping the assassins, the novice answered quickly. As a novice and not yet a true recruit or one raised in the life, Izuku was still in the dark enough for Keeper to erase what his knew of the assassins without any major, life-affecting mental problems. Then what's brought this on? It's my mom. Izuku's eyes dropped, the boy staring at the bottle of water in his hand so he wouldn't need to face the way Nekoi's eyes softened. She's everything to me. My father went missing shortly before I was born, lost in a villain attack according to police reports. We aren't exactly well off even with the trust fund he left behind, but she does her best to give me a good life. With me being quirkless, though, she worries. She worries a lot. I know she loves me and wants what she thinks is best for me, but she doesn't approve of me trying to become a pro hero. What would she say to me training to be an assassin? A killer? I feel like I'm betraying her trust by training to take people's lives. His hands squeezed the bottle, a hiss of air squeaking out from under the cap. Nekoi mulled over his words, considering everything he'd said and how best to respond. She leaned forward slightly. Midoriya, she said, why do you want to be a pro hero? Because they bring hope to people. The boy looked up, but the woman could see that his gaze was a million miles away somewhere in the past. They protect others when villains or natural disasters strike, making people smile and feel safe. Is that what a hero is to you? Is that why you want to become a pro? To protect your mother? Again, Izuku faltered. I hadn't thought about it. Listen, we assassins aren't here to bring hope to others, though we oftentimes do. We aren't here to right every wrong or catch every thief or villain. Some of us are fellow assassins, after all. The mission of the Brotherhood is to safeguard the free will of humanity, to give each person the choice to pick acceptance or denial, right or wrong. If the Templars got their way, there would be no villains, no heroes, and no choices. Not because everyone gets along, but because they would remove anyone who stood against them. She paused, seeing that the boy would still not look her in the eye. Midoriya, have you ever heard the name Destro? Izuku's eyes scrunched, the boy pushing the limits of his memory to see if he did. It sounded like an alias, so whomever Destro was, they were probably from after the dawn of quirks. Still, he drew a blank. I don't think so, Nekoi-sensei. Who's Destro? He was a pawn for the Templars, manipulated by them through the years of quirk discrimination. Do you know about those? When quirks were still new, a lot of people were scared of those who had powers. They were feared and sometimes rejected or even killed for being different, especially if their quirks were a mutation type. An almost complete 180 from where we are now, Nekoi nodded, Izuku remembering his own abuse at the hands of those with power when he had none. It wasn't much of a surprise that several of his classmates, usually his worst tormentors, showed red in his eagle vision. Destro, he was a freedom fighter and a rebel in the name of quirk equality, though many called his ideals closer to quirk superiority. Back then, they were still widely called meta-abilities, and after his mother's murder for her support of him, Destro started the Meta Liberation Army. And he was a Templar. I'm afraid not. Izuku blinked, surprised. Nekoi gave him a soft, weak smile. The world isn't so black and white for us to call every villain a Templar, Izuku, and many historical figures who did good we know to have had ulterior motives. No, Izuku. Destro got played like a flute. The Templars, we've heard several heralded the dawn of quirks as God's grace falling on his children for their devotion, even though plenty of Templars don't believe in religion. They infiltrated the ranks of the MLA at the end of the last century and used it to take out key political figures and spies during his short revolution. The Templars then filled those voids in the government with their own operatives. And when Destro's role had been played, they arrested him and finished him off so he couldn't spill anything he'd learned. They called it suicide, but Destro didn't kill himself. That's horrible, the novice gasped. That's history, but I didn't tell you that story just to pass the time. Sometimes, the ideals of free will mean allowing the fearful and the ignorant to run rampant, and they can cause a lot of grief and pain. It is not our job to determine what is true and what is not for the people. There is a teaching from the greatest assassin of our order that reminds us that you cannot force knowledge and learning onto others, they must seek that knowledge for themselves. Those who do not want to learn will turn a blind ear. We can try to show them the error of their ways, to show them that what they believe is destructive, but to change must be their choice. If they do not wish to learn, then we must wait for the next generation and hope that they do not have the same prejudices or ensure that, if someone is harming others for their own gain, that they can no longer do so. Nothing is true, the phrase still confused him, but Izuku felt at least one of the small pieces that made up the philosophical puzzle fall into place. He breathed and, letting his eagle vision flare for a moment, noticed that the blue aura around Nekoi had darkened in shade, showing that his positive connection with her had strengthened. Back to the matter at hand, I understand that lying to family can be hard. Mine are gone, but they were still around when I was in your shoes. I wasn't born into the life, funnily enough. Keeper screwed up and I forced the truth out of him when we were little. I always told myself that I was protecting my family from the horrible truths of the world by not telling them what I got involved in, and that helped me keep the Brotherhood's secrets from them. But you just said, I'm a hypocrite, Nekoi interrupted. I said it's not our job to determine what others cannot know, yet we keep our order secret. We can't operate if we are compromised, so we work from the shadows is today's definition of vigilantes. You could say the circumstances are different, but that's just an excuse. Our mission is hard, but we do it because someone has to in the face of the Templars. Izuku was silent for a moment, his fingers tensing and relaxing as he mulled over their conversation. Thank you, Nekoi-sensei. This Shadow War, the manipulations through history, it's a lot to take in. If my mother knew about all of it, it wouldn't change anything for her except make her worry. He stood, finishing his water before throwing the bottle into the garbage. Nekoi followed, doing the same with her milk carton. What we just touched on is one of the ironies of the assassins. We praise and look forward to the people's want to learn, but don't want them to learn about us. Where others refuse to see their contradictions, we study ours. But I think that's enough heavy talks for today, Midoriya. Keeper and I have set up a new challenge course for you to test your eagle vision. You ready? Yeah, Izuku muttered. I'm ready. 7 months until the UA exam. Eagle vision worked so much like a quirk, it was weird to think that it was not. Izuku mused on this as he laid in bed, considering everything he'd learned during his training. Each week, Keeper and Nekoi put him through a new set of tests to determine the limits of his historic gift and what it could do astounded him. Allies glowed blue while enemies or those with malicious intent glowed red. That was not all, however, for they discovered that targets and goals glowed gold and places where he could hide himself glowed white, rare as piles of hay were in the city. That piece of information came when, for one training session, Keeper had placed a note on a touch-sensitive dummy in a room of similar models and it was Izuku's task to pilfer the note without being felt. Izuku had turned on his special sight and walked right over to the dummy, not yet so subtly snagging the paper before returning. The looks of shock on his teachers' faces when Keeper admitted to having wiped his own memory so he didn't know which one had the note brought about the discovery. Now, outside of his training and with only the burn of his overused muscles and his thoughts to distract him, Izuku considered how such an ability would be beneficial for work as a pro hero. Currently, his thoughts were skewing toward rescue. With his target glow, as Keeper called it, Izuku would be able to find people buried in rubble or trapped in other difficult positions. Even if he did nothing but direct other heroes to their locations, his input could still save countless lives just by finding them. The muscles in his right arm twitched, spastically repeating the motion needed to activate the hidden blade every assassin was trained to use. Izuku's training was set to an odd schedule, the boy constantly reminded of such from his sore body. In the terms of becoming a full-fledged assassin, he had plenty of time to perfect his form before adulthood, but in the terms of having a snowball's chance in hell for the coming UA entrance exam, he was rapidly approaching the deadline. He supposed that he could have accepted the offer to have a UA teacher get him admitted through the easier recommendation test, but Izuku, much as he appreciated the sentiment, still wanted to get into the hero program on his own merit. He just needed to catch up to those who had been training for years for it. All that said, he wasn't above asking what he should prioritize in the short term. The UA entrance exam, according to a teacher there that was also an assassin, would consist of a written test followed by combat against robots in urban areas. With that in mind, Izuku's training was mostly in the assassin's fist-fighting style and endurance training interspersed with eagle vision testing or mechanics while resting. No moment was to be wasted, for time was a precious commodity. At least, that's what Mentor said. Deciding that he wasn't going to get to sleep anytime soon, even with the soreness of his body, Izuku pushed himself up and shuffled over to his desk where a notebook sat. He opened the book, a blank page meeting him. He picked up a hawk's feather, dipped it in liquid, and started writing, but nothing appeared where he wrote. That was another neat trick that his eagle vision was good for. Nekoi had told him how several of the master assassins of the past like Altair ibn Lahad, Ezio Auditore da Firenze, or Desmond Miles could see invisible writing using their eyes. Thanks to these legends, they tested and found that Izuku could do the same. His assassin analysis notebook was to be written only in invisible ink to help safeguard the secrets within from any wayward human or Templar that might get their hands on it. If worst came to worst, there was a tiny, remote detonated flare in the back that would incinerate the pages if it could not be rescued. Musing on this, Izuku wrote late into the night. "Izu, are you awake?" Before he knew it, a knock startled him. He was slumped over the desk, his back aching. His quill had fallen out of his hand when he'd fallen asleep late in the night, his journal sitting just out of range of a small puddle of drool. The boy quickly wiped his mouth and cleared away the puddle before his door opened, his mother stepping inside. "Sorry, what?" he asked, turning slightly as he rubbed the sleep from his eyes. What time is it? It's almost 25 after, the woman answered. Half an hour later than you usually get up. Oh Izu, were you up all night? I don't think so. He yawned, the action causing him to recognize the crick in his neck. I wanted to do some last-minute studying, but, he blinked, his mother's words registering. 25 after in Terabang. I'll be late for school at this rate. Ignoring the protests of his muscles, the verdict ran to his dresser for the day's clothes before pushing past his mother, rushing to the bathroom with a speed she had no idea he possessed. The door down the hall slammed shut, the sounds of running water following a moment later. Inko shook her head with a chuckle. Well, I suppose I should prepare a breakfast to go, she said to herself, only for something odd to catch her eye. Sitting on Izuku's desk was an open book. Unlike all the rest of the notebooks he'd shown her, she could see no writing at all. Confused, the woman stepped into the room. True enough to what she thought, there was no writing to be seen on the open pages. Even weirder, the feather of a bird rested next to it. Activating her quirk, small object attraction, Inko pulled the feather to her, giving it a closer inspection. Other than a small, slightly rounded point on the end, it looked like any other feather. Still, in the age of quirks, even the most normal of items could have an unseen function. Down the hallway, Inko heard the running water shut off, indicating that Izuku was about to finish his abridged morning routine. She replaced the feather as quickly as she could and made her exit, sending a backwards glance over her shoulder. Something just didn't feel right, but she would trust Izuku to introduce her to these teachers of his eventually. 1 month until the UA exam. The UA entrance exam is scheduled for the end of this month, the assassin in black said, the man staring at the recently promoted recruits assembled before him. There were 10 in total, each dressed the standard white robes of the assassins with the hoods up. Now beyond the unofficial rank of novice, each recruit's robes were decorated with colored embellishments selected by the recruit under the guidance of whomever was in charge of their training so the trainers could more easily tell them apart. Despite differing heights, shapes, skills, and length of training, each recruit here was the same age with the same aspirations. Shiketsu will have theirs on the 17th next month, followed by Ketsubatsu and Saijin on the 24th and CI on the 25th. UA's test happens early so that applicants who do not make the limited hero course have the chance to apply at the other schools. We hope that there will be 2 of you in each. Having hero students among our numbers spread across the various academies improves our ability to connect with and recruit informants, builders, and support, allowing the Brotherhood more discreet resources. Are there any questions? One recruit raised her hand, the girl's robes trimmed with a light blue. Master, wouldn't it be suspicious if many separate hero students had similar fighting styles? We all trained in the assassin's fist style. Surely that may tip off Templars to our loyalties. An excellent question, recruit, the man nodded. However, the age of quirks gives us an advantage in this field. Each hero and hero student has a unique method of fighting thanks to their inherent abilities, or the lack thereof. He paused, glancing at a recruit among them, his robe trimmed in a dark green. Assassin heroes are expected to not have any sign of their connection to the Brotherhood while performing hero duties save the burn on a full assassin's finger which can be covered by a glove or ring. This primarily refers to your choice of costume. Though every assassin is trained in the same style, it is overall defensive, something that is easily explained away as many styles focus on defense and heroes are typically defensive and reactionary by the nature of their job. Does that answer your question? Yes, Master. The recruit gave a small bow with one hand over her heart, a gesture that only held meaning for the Brotherhood. Thank you. Anyone else? Another recruit raised her hand, this one with robes trimmed in a light green. Yes, I would assume you will have all of us try the UA exam because it's so limited, Ribbit, the recruit said. There are 5 schools and 10 of us. What will happen if 3 of us or more succeed the UA exam, Ribbit? Another good question, and a situation we have dealt with many times. We will have more than 2 weeks to look over those who pass the exam and decide among ourselves who we believe to have the best chance and who would do better at another school. If need be, we will perform a personal tournament and decide that way. The female recruit in green nodded, giving her own bow. Master, the male recruit in dark green trimming questioned, his hand raised. What methods of training do you plan to give us to better prepare for the exam? Another good question. You all possess different skills and body types, so no one training will help you all. As such, master assassins from around Japan have agreed, as we always do this time of year, to train you individually, in pairs, or in groups as works best. The hours for training will be set by your trainers around their public schedule and they will focus on your strengths and possible improvements. That segues well into introducing you to those who have offered to train you. 5 figures stepped through the doorway, joining the assassin in black before the recruits. 3 of them were easily recognizable with their hoods down, the pro heroes Midnight, Edgeshot, and Maruko standing proudly in robes of gray, maroon, and white respectively. The others, both men, stood in tan with red trimmings or robes of dull yellow with a very pointed chin. The 6 of us will divide the 10 of you for training, the first man continued. Recruits Midoriya and Intelli, I will be instructing you too. Sir, the recruits bowed. They followed as the man exited, refusing to waste time listening to the others be claimed when there were plans to lay down. Izuku had to push to keep up with the man's quick pace, the verdict being shorter than the girl beside him. He recognized her as the first recruit to ask a question, but he did not try to start small talk. In moments, they stepped into a room Izuku recognized as the lounge. He blinked, having expected to be taken to one of the training areas. The girl beside him, Intelli, seemed similarly confused, but both sat on the couch as their trainer lowered himself onto the recliner and dropped his hood. He was pale with black hair and eye bags. I know you're confused, he said, but to establish the most efficient training method, we need to be on the same page and have the same end goal. To do that, we need to know each other. I am Shota Aizawa, the underground hero Eraserhead and a teacher at UA. My quirk is erasure, so I can temporarily erase the quirks of those whom I can see, barring mutation-style quirks. You, girl, introduce yourself. I am Psycho Intelli, the recruit said, dropping her hood to show a pretty, if somewhat plain, girl, her periwinkle hair in a Heim-style cut. She had pale skin and blue eyes. My quirk is IQ. I hear it is very similar to that of the principle of UA in that my intelligence increases when I drink tea. The type of tea I drink affects my manner of thinking. Some boost my strategic and tactical planning while others can help my mechanical understanding and so forth. This connection seems related to what the region of origin is known for. Now you, Aizawa said, turning his eyes on Izuku, the boy also lowering his hood. I'm Izuku Midoriya and I am quirkless, he began. Despite this, Nekoi-sensei says I have some of the strongest eagle vision of the age. It allows me to see allies, enemies, targets, and hiding spots. Keeper-sensei believes it can grow with time to show more, though we don't know how at the moment. Good, now that we know each other, I can tell you why I wanted to train the 2 of you. Aizawa leaned forward, the children responding in kind without thinking about it. To be blunt, neither of you are suited for combat in this superpowered age. Like me, your bodies are limited to the times of old and you need to use your brains and wits to survive against those who can manipulate the laws of the world at their whims. I will train each of you in close, mid, and long-range weaponry to find each of you a weapon or 2 that can put you on an equal playing field without the need for our signature hidden blades. Personally, I use a capture scarf. It is a flexible fabric that can still take blows from knives and restrain targets, ideal for all ranges but very difficult to use. I will give each of you a minute to think before I want you to suggest a weapon for your fellow recruit. Be prepared to explain your reasoning. Begin. Izuku took a second to reel at the sudden assignment, his mind awhirl with what weapons he knew of and what little he knew about his fellow recruit. She stood, the boy watching her movements as she made her way to the table and began making herself tea. She was slightly taller and of a lithe build, or he assumed so based on the make and movements of her robes. As such, heavy weapons would probably be unwieldy for her, allowing Izuku to narrow his suggestion to lighter choices. The robes hide the body types of the assassins, an advantage in the overall spectrum of keeping our identities secret from Templars and authorities but a detriment for this assignment. Still, the robes can contain a multitude of small weapons such as knives, needles, and even short swords, but anyone could deduce such a thing. As such, the optimal type of weapon to train with to catch others off guard is something with reach that can be collapsed for easy storage. A spear might work as bojutsu is a common practice that can be explained separately and collapsible designs are accessible. Tonfa and nunchaku may also be decent choices, but they do not have the same range. Though more limited, a bow or crossbow would provide a long-range option without upsetting authorities too much. Ideally, a theoretical weapon or 2 with all these forms would help situationally. Based on her quirk, however, it's reasonable to assume that she will have better choices than I could come up with. He trailed off, realizing that both Master Aizawa and Recruit Intelli were staring at him, the latter with her steaming tea an inch from her lips. Sorry, Recruit, what was that? It's a bad habit of mine, Izuku answered with a small chuckle, rubbing the back of his neck. Being quirkless, I loved analyzing the quirks of others, breaking down the most likely origins, limits, and potential they had. Since my training started, this has broadened into weapons and fighting styles as well. I didn't mean to interrupt. Don't apologize, Intelli said. That was well-reasoned. I had not yet considered a weapon with shifting forms or how authorities may react to certain types. I had assumed we would soon be hero students and, as such, would not be questioned. She closed her eyes, taking a sip of her drink before releasing a relaxed sigh. Midoriya, what trainings have you focused on and what sort of hero do you hope to be with no true quirk of your own? Izuku tried to hide a flinch at the reminder, but Intelli's eyes were closed, so she did not notice despite his failure. Their trainer, however, did notice. Much of my training has focused on physical endurance, relying on dexterity over strength. That's not to say I haven't been gaining muscle mass, but I want to be more of a dodge and retaliate fighter over a tank. As for my hero type, with my Eagle Vision's target glow, I want to be a rescue hero. I can more easily find people trapped in rubble with it even without a physical quirk. Intelli nodded slowly, absorbing the information. She took another sip of her tea. In that case, the ideal weapon for you is one that is sturdy and has length that can be wedged under rubble and leveraged, similar to a crowbar. A bow would work incredibly well for you for the same attributes you ascribe to me. Your fighting style should center around maneuverability and speed, two factors Bojutsu thrives on. As for a long-range option, I would recommend a rope dart. A rope dart? Izuku parroted as Aizawa raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Why? Multiple reasons, but the defining factor is how it would assist your movement, she explained. Though we, as assassins, are trained in parkour and climbing, being too good at such could be suspicious in the hero profession. They are easily recognizable skills if used in public as high-profile figures. A rope dart, however, would allow you excuses and methods in climbing. In addition, if the rope is made of something similar to Master Aizawa's capture scarf, then it could also be used to pull trapped and/or injured civilians closer for rescue. Excellent observations, both of you, Aizawa said. However, it would be suspicious if you both had a transforming weapon, much less the same one. They are not common enough among first years to pass off with any lame excuse and could trace you back to the Brotherhood. Never compromise the Brotherhood, the recruits intoned. Exactly. Therefore, which of you has the best chance of explaining possession of a multiform weapon? Intelli, Izuku answered quickly. With her knowledge-based quirk, that would explain her reasoning in the formation of the weapon. I shouldn't have access to that because of my background, it would raise too many questions. My best bet would be a bow and a homemade rope dart. They can then be improved on after I'm in UA. If you make it, Aizawa reminded him. The entrance exam is illogical in its focus on destructive quirks, so quirks like mine that cannot affect machines are next to useless. Without any quirk of your own, you will need to outperform others with an advantage in a way that does not tip off certain teachers to who trained you. He shifted, turning to Intelli. You are in the same boat. UA is not my preferred school, the female recruit replied. I would prefer a smaller school like CI, but I will test my skills anyway to increase the chances of achieving our goal. Good. That's the sort of commitment the Brotherhood needs. Between this training and the pro-hero programs, each of you should be ready for final assessments around the middle or end of your second years. More importantly, we will do our best to ensure you can survive the rigors of both hero work and your duties as assassins. Now, let's stop in with the blacksmith to discuss your weapons with her so we can start that training tomorrow. 3 days until the UA exam. Izuku panted, his muscles aching as he tried to catch his breath. His main weapon of choice, a metal bow, was extended behind him. The obstacle course he'd just run flashed through his memory, the free running, climbing, hiding, precision, combat, and assassination phases having tested everything he'd learned up to this point in his training and more. He glanced at the clock that held his final time, 4 minutes and 28.64 seconds. Damn, he muttered to himself. Of all 10 hero aspirants within the Brotherhood, Izuku had been the last to go through the obstacle course that was meant to show the rest of the trainers what he had learned and how far he had come in his month-long boot camp under Master Aizawa. Considering this, his current time was leaps ahead of the 10-minute finish he had had at the beginning of the month. Make no mistake, he was happy with his improvement, but he paled in comparison to the 2-minute 45-second time of the recruit in light green. She had taken first place because of her amazing parkour abilities, having scaled that portion of the course in less than a minute with the help of her quirk. Getting his breathing under control, Izuku eased out of his final stance and shrunk his bow back into its carrying state, the weapon falling in on itself until it was the size of a can of pepper spray. He slid it onto a designated slot on his utility belt beside his rope dart and stepped through the doorway where the other trainers and recruits were waiting for him. Fourth place, Master Aizawa nodded as the boy stepped through the doorway. You have more than doubled your initial run and proven yourself a capable fighter. You have worked hard, reeked Midoriya. Damn, Master Usagiyama laughed. Aizawa said you were quirkless, but you sure showed your stuff. I mean, you're that fast after, like, 10 months of training. Don't know if it'll be enough to get into UA, but I'm sure any of the other hero schools would take you after a showing like that. I'd try to push you through if I were a teacher. Do not get his hopes up, another assassin said, this one a man without a nose dressed in ragged, tan robes with crimson accents. He is still quirkless. A worthy hero he may become if given the chance, but many with the spark are denied such in these unfair times. He won't be quirkless for much longer, Master Aizawa commented. We have pulled strings to change his entry in the quirk directory. We should be able to pass off his eagle vision as a quirk. We have chosen to call it empathetic eye. Though not flashy, it will give him more of a chance without the stigma. Still, come find me if all the schools reject you, kid, the rabbit woman said. I'll get you a license the old-fashioned way. It's not old-fashioned when you're the only one to have forced your way into the HPSC and demanded a hero license, Usagiyama, the assassin with the pointed chin put in. Be that as it may, my students scored the top 2 placements, Master Kamihara, the pro hero edge shot, preened. They will earn the spots at UA. As the adult assassins discussed Izuku's and the rest of the recruits' chances, some being more pessimistic than others, several of the other recruits walked over to the green-haired boy. That was an excellent showing, Midoriya, Intelli said. You beat my time by 40 seconds since I lost so much locating and overthinking in that target assassination section. You made up a lot of time on the precision section, though, Izuku responded. You've gotten really good with those hand crossbows of yours. I missed 5 of my throwing knives. Don't sell yourself short, Ribbit, the recruit that won first place put in. She had dark green hair like his own, but hers was tucked into her light green accented robes. Her dark eyes were wide and her mouth sat in an unexpressive line, a side effect of her quirk. Even so, Izuku considered her, like many of the other female recruits, to be pretty enough to fluster him. I doubt many hero students could pull off a time like that. From what I've been told, most of them are brute force types. She's right, another recruit agreed, this one with purple accents on his robes. I think I'm going to need to consider other schools with you in the running for the UA spots. Heat rose in Izuku's cheeks as all this praise was heaped on him all at once. A hand rose, rubbing the back of his neck. Thanks, he said. It wasn't that special, though. I mean, you scored first place, Asui. You're a shoo-in for UA. Call me Sue. More heat rose to Izuku's face as he considered the possibility of referring to a girl his age by a nickname. For a moment, he forgot that every person in this room, himself, the other teens, and the adults, were all training or have been trained to kill others for their definition of the good of humanity. Everything seemed so normal when one forgot about that little detail. Maybe that can wait. Izuku tried. I mean, if we both make it into UA, it would be weird if we were so familiar with each other, right? The girl tilted her head, considering the argument. I agree with recruit Midoriya, Intelli commented. We may act familiar here, but until we all have time in the same public spaces, there would be too many questions about how we know each other. We must keep each other at arm's length lest we slip up outside. I suppose, Asui said. Izuku guessed she was disappointed, but her facial expressions were hard to read because of her mutation-style quirk. In that case, I hope to meet you outside soon, Midoriya. Same to you, Asui, her fellow verdant replied. The boy in purple opened his mouth. Well, I think, recruits, Master Aizawa said, clapping his hands twice. All 10 recruits cut off their conversations mid-word, each snapping to attention. The UA teacher's eyebrows rose appreciatively. You have each shown remarkable progress this last month. The UA exam is in 2 days' time and we will not meet again until then. You all need that time to rest and recover. Training will resume once the exam results come out. At that time, we will discuss who would fit best at the other schools. He gave a small smile, one of the first Izuku had ever seen from the perpetually tired man. We do not say it enough, but we are proud of how far you have come. Some of you were born into this life, others were recruited, but we are sure you will each bring honor to the Brotherhood. Dismissed. Entry exam. Izuku took a breath, holding it for a moment before letting it go, allowing it to carry away all his stress and tension. The UA testing center stood before him, proud and strong, with numerous arches and lush greenery. Other applicants stepped past him by the dozens onto the premises, some with obvious quirks and others who looked just as plain as him. Izuku's eyes shifted, picking out a tired-looking Master Aizawa in one window looking down. By the doors, he saw Psycho Intelli flash him a small nod before stepping through. His thoughts were cut off as a hard shoulder crashed into his from behind. Izuku caught himself, the spiky, blonde hair of a former friend connected to a body walking with confidence. Izuku tried to brush it off, but he couldn't help it. He took another breath, blinking as he allowed his eagle vision to activate. Again, he found Master Aizawa, this time the man glowing a strong blue. Intelli's blue disappeared behind the doorway. Many other applicants glowed various levels of white, but one student burned red as brightly as a small sun. Bakugo Katsuki refused to look back. You look nervous, Ribbit. Izuku jumped at the sudden voice, the verdant losing his footing and starting to fall backward. An arm shot from the speaker, grabbing his to arrest his momentum. He stared up, the uncovered face and large eyes of Tsuyu Asui staring back. With his eagle vision still activated, she glowed a calming blue. Hi, he managed. Thanks. No need to thank me, the frog girl said. It's my fault you almost fell in the first place, Ribbit. I'm Tsuyu Asui, but you can call me Sue if you want. Izuku Midoriya, he trailed off, his back to normal eyes glancing down at where she held his wrist. Getting his feet under him, he expected the girl to let go, but he had no such luck. Red spread over his face at the close contact. Well, good luck, Midoriya, Tsuyu said, letting him go. We better hurry, the written test starts soon. Oh, right, she turned, setting a brisk pace he tried to keep up with. Good luck to you, too. An hour later, Izuku found himself in a darkened amphitheater beside the one person without a positive or neutral glow. Bakugo did not look his way, instead staring ahead at a lone podium. This was a better reaction from him than any Izuku had seen in the past few months. A moment later, the pro-hero present Mike rose from beneath the floor and stepped up to the stand. Izuku sucked in an excited breath at the presence of the man. Hello, everybody, the voice hero yelled. Are you ready to rumble in Terabang? Silence answered the man, staying stoic. I see. That's fine since I've got lots to tell you. Up next is the practical of the UA exam. If you'll direct your attention to the screen behind me, you'll see that all of you will be divided into one of 6 different testing locations. They're all the same, so everyone will be on the same playing field. As for your opponents, UA has cooked up some robots for you to smash. Depending on their difficulty, they could be worth 1, 2, or 3 points. Points will be awarded once a bot is disabled, be that total annihilation or simply severing its wires. Yeah, sir, I have a question. One examinee several rows down stood, his hand raised. What's up, listener? There seems to be an error in the handout we were given, the boy said. You have listed 3 separate point values, but the handout shows 4 silhouettes. If this is a mistake on the part of UA, I dare say that would not be a positive reflection on the esteemed reputation of this school. It ain't no misprint, Present Mike told him. That last bot is actually worth 0 points, meaning it's not even worth your time to fight, but more like an obstacle to avoid. Thank you, sir. My apologies for the interruption. Don't you sweat it, listener. This is a place for all questions and answers. As for the rules of the test, there are 2 of them. First, score as many points as you can by taking out as many bots as you can. Second, any attacks on your fellow applicants will result in immediate disqualification. Other than that, you all can go wild, though we ask that you keep damage to the buildings as low as you can. The buses will leave as soon as you're ready. Izuku went to stand, only for a hand to grab his arm. It felt uncomfortably warm. You better not make it, Deku, Bakugo growled. It's a shame we'll be at different sites since I wanted to crush you myself. Still, this is my origin story and I won't let a stupid, no good, worthless, quirkless Deku like you take away its uniqueness. He let go, stomping away before Izuku could get a word in edgewise. What a jerk, Intelli commented from the row above. Izuku turned, surprised. Don't listen to that guy. It sounds like he's angry at everything. His truth is warped. With a wink left unseen in the darkness of the auditorium, Intilly bid Izuku good luck and made her way to her own testing grounds. That same nervousness from before welled in Izuku's gut, his hands slick with sweat. He tried to wipe it off on his pants, but that only made room for more to take its place. A mock city rose before both Izuku and all his fellow test-takers at Site B, thankfully this number not including Katsuki. His eyes, looking for motion to help calm his nerves as the silent buildings were not doing the job, scanned the crowd. He recognized the student that had asked the question of Present Mike, the boy wearing shorts that revealed the engines in his calves. One other assassin recruit was there, and, for a moment, Izuku found himself disappointed that it wasn't Tsuyu. Rather, it was one of the other male recruits, the boy making eye contact with Izuku before giving a wink and tapping the ground with a foot. Izuku nodded and set his head on straight, his fingers checking the tools on his belt. Go, Present Mike's voice echoed over the grass, Izuku head snapping up and needing a second to comprehend before his legs started to move. What are you waiting for? There are no countdowns in real life. Go. The verdict found himself in the middle of the pack, little space to move on either side. A girl with brown hair and pink cheeks ran at his right while the loud kid from before charged past his left with a burst of speed. Needing room, Izuku pulled his rope dart from his belt and gave it a spin before throwing it at the closest building. It embedded itself into the concrete before the boy jumped and pulled, carrying himself over the crowd, some of whom had to duck, and to the left. He latched onto the nearest window and pulled the dart loose, scurrying up the wall while using the dart every few seconds. Reaching the roof, Izuku rolled over the side and ran, pushing himself to the opposite side before leaping over to the next building. Taking this shortcut, he placed himself ahead of most of the other examinees, giving himself free range over a whole street of robots with little competition. Below, a trio of robots stood, 2 stamped with 1s and the last with a 2. Drawing his bow, Izuku jumped and let gravity carry him down. The hard steel of his bow dug into the jointed neck of the 2-pointer, Izuku spinning some of his momentum away before leveraging the end he held. The robot's head popped off with a, pop, sparks fizzling at the now loose ends of its wires. Target acquired, the other bots said, turning their metal fists toward the boy. He took a step back, his weapon extended behind him, and waited for the first move. The 1-pointer on his left threw a punch, Izuku sidestepping to the outside around it as his bow spun. He jammed it into the thing's shoulder, something crunching under the force. The other robot moved, placing itself where Izuku had been before throwing its own punch. The verdict pulled, moving the first machine so it acted as a shield. The punch from the second robot crumpled its head, but Izuku did not take the time to survey his handiwork. He jumped, vaulting over the now unresponsive 1-pointer and threw his rope dart into the remaining one's camera. It let out a metallic screech as it lost visual, only for the sound to be cut off as Izuku hit it upside the head with enough force to knock its literal screws loose. 4 points down, the boy muttered, several other bots turning his way as more teens entered the street from various points, who knows how many to go. Time turned into a blur as he faced foe after foe, periodically attacking a robot from behind if several were ganging up on another hero hopeful. Some of those he helped sent him curt thank yous or nods, others yelled at him for kill stealing, but Izuku ignored both, focusing on his task at hand. 2 minutes left, listeners. The voice of Present Mike shouted, several of those with few points stirring themselves into a frenzy. Despite this, most of the mechanical targets were little but scrap. Izuku had just dispatched a 3-pointer with a well-executed throw when the ground rumbled, a plume of dust covering an entire city block. He turned, the massive form of the 0-pointer rising over the buildings. What in Terabang? He demanded to nobody. That thing is worth 0 points. No wonder Present Mike said to avoid it. Run away. A number of examinees yelled, said teams following their own advice and fleeing the scene. Izuku took a step back, weighing the pros of following in their example as he watched the massive treads of the 0-pointer crush working and broken robots alike under its bulk. Glass windows cracked under air pressure alone as it passed and each swing of its arms destroyed entire buildings. Help! A voice cried, Izuku's eyes coming to rest on the form of the brown-haired girl he'd run next to at the start of the test. One of her legs was trapped under rubble, the girl trying to reach it with her hand but falling just shy. She stared up at the machine coming her way with unabashed fear. Izuku's feet were moving before he decided to help. When his mind caught up to his body, he realized he had no plan and the time he did have to make one was quickly disappearing. Deciding that having one step and then making it up as he went would be the best option, despite how he knew Master Aizawa would call him reckless and stupid for such, Izuku rushed toward the girl. His rope dart spun, building momentum before he released it. Its end stabbed into the rubble, trapping the girl, said girl flinching at the sudden appearance. Izuku jumped, pulling himself forward like he had at the beginning of the test. He did not cover the entire distance, he would have needed his bracer's retractor for that, but he could not have explained having it should he have gotten caught, but the maneuver still cut his travel time. He was beside the girl in seconds. His bow already elongating. "I'm gonna get you out," Izuku promised, shimmying the end of his weapon under the rubble. She stared at him, but he had no time to let the eyes of a pretty girl distract him. Sticking his knee out as a fulcrum, Izuku pushed, his metal bow straining against the weight of the broken concrete. Sweat beaded the vert's brow as man-made stone shifted. The girl seemed to realize what was happening, quickly pulling her leg from under the rubble. She flinched, the foot twisted at an angle it should not have been. Izuku almost asked if she could run, but decided that was a foolish question. Right now, the question was more of a choice, whether to run away or try to take out the giant machine. One would certainly be more impressive than the other. "What's your quirk?" Izuku asked. "Zero gravity," the brunette answered. "I can get rid of the gravity of whatever I touch with all 5 fingers. "Perfect," he grinned, pointing to the largest mass of concrete on the street. "Can you negate the weight of that piece of rubble?" "Not for long." "Why?" Izuku didn't answer, the girl squeaking as he scooped her into a princess carry. An almost mad glint shone in his eye as a plan that would be too obvious for an assassin to pull off presented itself to him. Certainly, this would get whatever Templar teachers were in the school to second-guess themselves if he brought suspicion later. Izuku carried her to the veritable boulder of material, setting her beside it. He nodded. Wordlessly but wanting to repay him for his help, the brunette pressed her hand into the side of the concrete. It started to float, rising only a couple of inches. "Whatever it is, do it fast," she begged, covering her mouth as her cheeks started to turn green. Izuku nodded, stabbing his rope dart into the concrete and pulling it away. He turned his eyes on the approaching zero-pointer, estimating its speed, density, and placement before he began spinning. The concrete followed him, turning in a circle until, having built up the right amount of speed, Izuku lashed the rope to remove the dart. The concrete flew, the eyes of nearly every examinee watching its arc toward the behemoth. The brunette pressed her hands together just before the concrete reached its ultimate destination, the massive slab slamming into the face of the zero-pointer. It crumpled like aluminum, gears, wires, and other mechanical whatsits folding in on each other until a single spark caused a chain reaction. Something inside exploded, triggering another and another running down the body of the machine. It fell backward, hitting the ground with an echoing crash. "And that's time, baby," the voice of Present Mike shouted as if to punctuate and add to the cacophony. "I sure hope you all are happy with your scores, 'cause that's all you're getting. Please return to grab your stuff. Results will be out to all of you in a week." Tension drained from Izuku's shoulders, his adrenaline spike receding to leave behind a burning ache in his muscles. "That was awesome," the girl whose help he had solicited said, reminding Izuku that she was there. He turned, returning to her side while ignoring the new puddle of vomit that now smelled beside her. "How's your leg?" "Broken, I think," she answered with a wince. "Damn, that's gonna set me back even if I get in. Not to mention the hospital bills." "Well, my oh my," a woman's voice sighed, the pair turning to see a short woman with gray hair and a cane looking at them. "You kids hurt yourselves more and more each year. I keep telling them to cut down the danger, but they just don't listen to me." "Your recovery girl, the youthful heroine," Izuku blurted. "That's me. Now, let's see what I can do about that broken ankle." Recovery girl knelt, puckering her lips before they extended to kiss the brunette's leg. A green glow surrounded her, her foot turning to set itself as the injury disappeared. The girl drooped a little. "I've fixed you up, but it's sapped your energy. Go get some rest at home, okay? Do you need any help?" She turned the last question to Izuku, the verdict shaking his head. "No, ma'am, I've only got a few bruises. They'll be fine by tomorrow." "Good, it's nice to see some of you aren't as foolhardy as others." Recovery girl turned, walking off toward the largest clump of teens. "I guess that's our K to leave," the brunette chuckled. She stood, still a little wobbly. I hope to see you in class." "Oh, why yeah," Izuku replied, wishing he had his hood so he could cover his face. He wasn't used to standing so close to a girl with nothing to do. Needing to extract himself, he ran. Had he taken the time to activate his eagle vision, he would have seen nearly every person in the vicinity shift to a pale blue. Gotta admit, midnight began, leaning back in her chair as she and the rest of the faculty watched the monitors of leaving teens. This year's batch was more impressive than last year's. I hope so, Aizawa grunted. Do you, though? The man known as Vlad King questioned. You had a lot of time to kill after expelling your last class. Aizawa ignored the hidden barb in his words with the ease of an actor. So, are there any students that caught your attention? Principal Nezu asked, his beady eyes sending a warning to the other first-year homeroom teacher through the darkness. I think it's safe to say we all saw that kid at Ground B, Ruff, the dog-headed counselor hound dog barked. He beat a 0-pointer, after all. The only one this year. Yeah, but he needed the help of another, Eraserhead waved. Good teamwork, but that's not enough to just admit the kid. Applicant 2234, Izuku Midoriya, Smintos read from a file. Says here his quirk's called empathetic eye. It lets him see the malice or goodwill inside a person. Preferred goal, rescue hero. Sounds more like he could be an infiltration specialist, Midnight commented. Or a combat PI. What about the girl he helped? Ectoplasm asked. Smintos shifted through his files. Applicant 3562, Ochako Uraraka. Her quirk's called zero gravity, allowing her to negate the gravity of anything she touches with all 5 of her fingers. She also wants to be a rescue hero. I say they're in the running for our hero course, Nezu grinned. Anyone else? I've got several, Hound Dog began, the conversation lasting long into the evening as the teachers weighed the scores of each impressive applicant. Izuku, your letter. It's here, your letter from Ua. The young recruit jumped to his feet at the sound of his mother's voice, the boy dropping his quill as he rushed out of his room. She was standing in the hallway, an envelope with the wax seal of Ua stamped over its fold. Gently taking the letter from her, Izuku stared at it, as if scared what it might contain. If it told him he was accepted, he will have taken the first step in fulfilling his oldest dream. If it rejected him, all his hopes of being a pro-hero would be crushed and he'd live his life as a vigilante, having to hide his real life from his mother. To be fair, he'd have to hide at least half of it anyway. Or he could, try for the other hero schools. That, however, was not a thought in his mind. Still, this letter was a Schrodinger's paradox unopened, the boy neither accepted nor rejected. He needed an answer. Taking a knife from the kitchen, Izuku cut the top of the envelope. Inside lay both a folded paper and a small metal disc. Confused, he slid the disc into his hand. Several lights flashed across its surface, the boy dropping it on the counter for him and his mother to see. A hard light projection formed above the metal, the slumped form of a black-haired man appearing. Izuku bit his lip. Applicant 2234, Izuku Midoriya, Shota Aizawa said, his voice without emotion. You passed the written test with flying colors, but you must have known that the practical exam is what would make or break your chances. You scored 33 villain points with your weapons and wit. A respectable number for someone with a non-combat-oriented quirk, but that alone would not have earned you a spot in the coveted hero course. Izuku felt himself deflate a little, his mother sniffling beside him. Luckily for you, the projection of Aizawa continued, there was a hidden aspect of the test, one none of the applicants were told of. These are called rescue points and are given to students who show themselves helping others when given the chance and, most notably, at their own detriment. The hologram flashed and changed, images and clips of Izuku helping other teens appearing one after another before, ultimately, the combination he pulled off with the brunette girl to take down the 0-pointer. Inko gasped as the first explosion cued the image to pause. For your actions, a panel of judges has awarded you a total of 50 rescue points. Your actions also inspired others. Again, the hologram changed, this time shifting to a scene with the brunette talking to present Mike. Excuse me, she said. Do you remember the boy that helped me during the practical? He was about this tall. Kind of messy hair and a lot of freckles. He really saved me, so, I want him to have some of my points. He wasted time saving me instead of scoring more when he could have, so I want to try to help him in any way I can. The video paused, shrinking to a corner of the screen as Aizawa reappeared. We didn't transfer any points, he said. We didn't need to, not that we would have anyway. With 33 villain points and 50 rescue points, your total score comes to 83 points. Congratulations, Izuku Midoriya. You have earned a spot in the hero course. UA is now your hero academia. Plus Ultra. To the point and without any emotion, the hologram cut off there, turning itself off. Izuku sat there for a moment, shell-shocked, until Inko squealed. You did it, she squeaked, wrapping him in a hug. Tears flowed from her eyes, soaking into his shoulder. My baby boy is growing up. First you get a late quirk and now you're going off to become a hero. Oh, I'm so worried for you. What do we need to get you? How much will it cost? Oh, never mind that. Tonight, I'm making your favorite. Yeah, Izuku muttered, his mother letting go as she got dinner started. Absently, he reached forward, a single button push restarting the message. Slowly, he smiled. I did it. Well, Izuku heard Nekoi mutter as he slipped through the Dagoba portal. Wiping sand from his outfit, he turned to see her leaning against the wall. She pushed off, uncrossing her arms to reach forward and ruffle his hair. If it isn't our little dark horse. I heard you've been accepted into UA's hero course. That's quite the achievement, Nekoi-sensei, he whined, pushing her hands away. How did you know I got in? Just about everyone knows, the master assassin chuckled. Aizawa hasn't stopped complaining about what a success story you are. Complaining? Oh yeah, Nekoi laughed. He was so excited until Mentor told him he'll be training new recruits every year. I didn't even know he could smile and it's gone just like that. She snapped her fingers. Izuku worked out a chuckle at his teacher's misfortune, knowing that the only thing he wanted more than efficient work was no work at all. Come on, Nekoi insisted, sliding the door open. Let's get you to that meeting so everyone else can congratulate you. He did not need to wait until the meeting, every assassin he'd met or trained with, and a few he hadn't congratulating him on his walk over. Each and every one was smiling for him, for his hard work paying off. It was an elation he'd never felt before, ballooning inside him so thoroughly that he almost felt he could float. Too quickly, they came to the door of the changing room. This is where I gotta say goodbye, Nekoi said. I was putting off a mission to be the first one to see you, but I can't leave it be. I'll see you for training tomorrow. She pat him on the shoulder and turned, walking away. Izuku watched her go, silently thanking her for bringing him into the Brotherhood. He stepped into the changing room. He was the last to arrive at the meeting, though it looked like a couple of the other recruits had only just beaten him. No one was able to say anything before Master Aizawa clapped his hands, all but one of the other master assassins who had trained them arrayed behind him. Izuku rushed to his spot in line, saluting with the rest. Even after more than a week, you all are still prompt, Aizawa said. That's good. Anyway, it is my pleasure to announce our UA student informants, Izuku Midoriya and Tsuyu Asui. Would you two please step forward? Izuku did so, Tsuyu stepping out of line with him in the corner of his vision. They walked up to Aizawa, kneeling before him. The other recruits politely clapped, though there were a couple disgruntled mutterings. Several of you were in the running, Master Kayama, the pro hero Midnight, commented. It was a close call, but we couldn't play favorites. We are assassins first and teachers second, but UA is still very selective and we must select those who will most stay true to the ideals of pro heroes. We were lucky to not need to push boundaries to get two of you in, and any more would only result in the need to deny someone a chance after they earned it. In this case, recruits Midoriya and Asui simply trained harder and performed better. I hope you all follow in their examples. Thank you, Kayama, Master Aizawa nodded. Now then, the rest of you will continue your training for the coming exams for the other hero schools. Our teachers for each will be leading this training and you may go with whomever you wish. Still, he turned to the two recruits who had succeeded where the others failed. I want you to remember that your accomplishment, while outstanding, is not universally celebrated. Midoriya, Asui, in taking a place in the hero course, you have denied the runner-up their chance. For us, this is good, for you made it. For them, the opposite. Why? Because nothing is true, Ribbit, Asui answered quickly. The truth is subjective, and where one sees light, another sees darkness. Very good. Now the rest of you, we are wasting time. Get to training. Yes, Master. The other 8 recruits dispersed with their teachers, 3 of them lingering. Intelli stayed, but only long enough to give Izuku a pat on the shoulder before taking her leave with Master Kamihara. The last 2 shuffled for a moment. Master Aizawa, one asked, this one female with pink accents on her white robe. Where is Master Akaguro? He had to meet with a former apprentice, Aizawa answered. You are both to report to the mentor for training instructions. The recruits bowed, also taking their leave. Now alone, Aizawa turned his full attention on the new UA students. A soft smile graced his lips. I will have both of you in my class, he told them. I believe Nezu suspects I have trained you, Midoriya, yet I managed to argue for you for the same reason why I received you for training. Asui, you will also be in my class. That was simply luck of the draw. I look forward to seeing you both in 1A. I expect you to continue to bring honor to yourselves, the Brotherhood, and now to UA as well. He paused, a sigh passing his lips. Stop kneeling, it's bad for the knees. Anyway, do what you want. I need a nap. You made it, Suyu said as Aizawa left. I knew you could do it, Ribbit. Thank you, Asui. I told you to call me Su. We've met on the outside now, so we can be familiar, Ribbit. I mean, I suppose so, I'm just not used to people wanting to be familiar with me. I usually say what's on my mind, Izuku, Suyu said, the boy gaping at her casual use of his given name. You're easy to get along with and you're an assassin recruit like me, Ribbit. I was born into a family of assassins, so I like to talk about my struggles with others who can understand them. I was afraid I'd be unable to do that at UA, but knowing you will also be there is a weight off my shoulders. Thank you, Ribbit. I don't know what to say, Izuku confessed, one hand rubbing the back of his neck. I'm more used to being looked down on as the quirkless kid, so suddenly having so many people be happy for me, it's so out of my depth. This world is sink or swim, Izuku. If you need help staying afloat, I'm an excellent swimmer, Ribbit. Comes with the frog quirk. Though her mouth did not move, Izuku could see the joking smile in her eyes. He gave his own smile in response. Ah, one more thing. Go talk to Mentor. He'll help you pay for school supplies if you want help. Anyway, I need to get going, Ribbit. I promised to help my siblings with their training now that I'm accepted to UA. I'll see you around. Izuku stood there as the frog girl stepped around him, exiting the room and leaving him alone. He bounced on the balls of his feet, excited energy welling up as he reminded himself, again, that he'd made it into UA. Maybe Keeper Sensei could help him celebrate with a new course. He could stand for a challenge.